Figaro, 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 son qua, Figaro. Son qua, Figaro là, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro su, Figaro giù, Figaro su, Figaro giù. Pronto, prontissimo, son come il fulmine, sono il factotum della città, della città, della città, della città, della città. Bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo, bravo Figaro, bravo bravissimo. A te fortuna, a te fortuna, a te fortuna, non mancherà. La 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 la. A te fortuna, a te fortuna, a te fortuna, non mancherà. Sono il factotum della città, sono il factotum della città, della città, della città, della città.
Hello, I'm Euphigenia Doubtfire, dear.
Bon appetit!
It's homework time.
You can't imagine what it was like being married to Daniel.
He sounds like an absolute stallion.
Daddy.
Hello, dear!
Robin Williams. A man who'd do anything.
Back off!
God, it's hot in here.
To see his kids. Mrs. Doubtfire.
My first day as a woman. I'm getting hot flashes.
In the Wild West world of podcasting, there is one podcast that is authentic and genuine and continues to stand tall in its originality. Based on a passion for his guests, their work, and his love of podcasting, Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast get amazing, diverse, unique guests found nowhere else. They include Hall of Fame athletes, Academy Award winners, Golden Globe winners, Super Bowl champions, Emmy winners, award-winning authors, award-winning film score composers, directors, trailblazers, pioneers, and inventors. The variety and quality are endless. There is something for everyone. Derek Thomas is the hero you deserve. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector. Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
Lisa Jakub is an author, speaker, mental wellness advocate, and a retired actor whose credits include Mrs. Doubtfire and Independence Day. Lisa, welcome to the podcast today.
Derek, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Okay, so Lisa, let me ask you. Tell me about the seven. I'm looking. I have social media observations. I love the ones you have, but tell me about the 7-foot-tall robot woman in your living room.
She's actually in my office here.
Okay.
And I think it's really important to have a 7-foot-tall robot woman in your office. It's essential, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And you are a dog person, which already puts you ahead of most. Talk about your dog or dogs. You clearly have an affinity for them.
I do. So I have a very anxious rescue mutt named Olive. We've had Olive for about 3 years. When we adopted her, she was probably about 2 and had been greatly abused and had a really rough life before we got her. So she was terrified of everything, terrified of men, terrified of flags, fire hydrants, was really in poor health and having a really hard time. And it has been such an incredible experience to watch her learn how to be in the world and watch her learn how to trust again and play and kind of have this good life that she can have now with us. And so she's adorable and inspiring and quite a wonderful little soul.
Oh, that's really well said. And let me ask you, because, and we're going to talk about how much of your work is in the field of anxiety. Do you feel like anything that you've learned over the years or practice, I don't mean to sound over the top, but is any of it practical when it comes to your dog or is there anything that you do that makes life easier for your dog?
Yeah, entirely. I mean, it's amazing because when we first adopted her, we are experienced dog owners. I've had dogs since I was a little kid, just my entire life. And I knew that I could handle a difficult dog. We often adopt senior dogs or dogs that have health issues because we know like, okay, we can handle this and we can kind of support a dog through something difficult like that. But when we got Olive, man, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I found that her anxiety actually amped up my own. And so like she really caused me to have to look at my own reactions to things because she would have anxiety, which would give me anxiety, which would then give her more anxiety. And we would get locked in this cycle. So I really needed to learn how to kind of work with my own emotions and my own reactions so that I could help her to feel safe. So that she could know that she didn't have to take charge of situations, that she didn't have to defend herself and me, that I could kind of step up and look after things. And so while it was incredibly challenging in the beginning for me dealing with all of her stuff, it actually really made me look at my own things with her. And I think, it's the total cheesy thing of like the bumper sticker on the back of the car of like the heart footprint of like who rescued who, but I'm totally buying into that crap. Like I am down with all of that. So yeah.
So I mean, I don't like to make anything about me, but I will tell you I have a sticker of an Australian Shepherd on my car. So I guess we're both buying into this crap. So I
love it.
Yeah, I'm
There's
all in.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
There is a reason for it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I love your responses to the whatever happened to stories, or like TMZ does one that's I just think is so disrespectful. It's the look at them now, which I don't think is meant to be flattering to any actor, director, or whomever. I love your responses to this. When you say you're going to have to be more specific, and we're going to get to your book as well, but talk about that a little bit. Is that something that you get annoyed by? Do you love the chance to come back at people with a humorous response? What's your mentality when it's, I don't know. I almost feel like sometimes, because I've covered a lot of Comic-Cons, fans think they can, I don't want to say own or control somebody like that's an actor or whatever, but I have to say I've seen, interactions with William Zabka from, The Karate Kid or Sebastian Stan where they've taken pictures with fans and fans it was a little bit inappropriate the way they kind of, I don't want to say manhandled, but it was a little bit too much. Sometimes I think actors or people in the public spotlight sometimes are perceived as like property, or like you could say whatever, people could kind of say whatever they want, right? Am I looking at that a little bit over the top, Lisa?
You are not looking at that over the top. That is absolutely correct. And I think it's actually a real problem in our culture in the way that our society fetishizes fame and also just does not treat actors or celebrities like human beings. There is definitely this sense of ownership that I found to be incredibly difficult and painful and suffocating, and was one of the many reasons that I left the film industry. But I think, we have put actors and celebrities up on this pedestal, which it just takes away all of their humanity. And so when there are face-to-face interactions, when you see someone just kind of like walking down the street with their, coffee and their kid and their sweatpants, it seems like, oh my God, this is something I should look at and mock or have some certain feelings about, because we have taken away their humanity. And I think it is incredibly dangerous. I was in a number of situations where I did not feel physically safe. And so, I think it is a real problem with tabloids and magazines, the way that they talk about actors, because it really does form this opinion that society has about that, well, they're not really real people. And there have been situations where, people have been snarky or rude on social media, and I've just kind of come back and said like, hey, I'm a person, and that actually really hurt my feelings. And their reaction was like, oh my God, I kind of forgot that you saw this and that would hurt your feelings. And I would never say that to a real person. And so I think it's good in a lot of ways that there is more interaction on social media, because you can just kind of be like, hey, I'm a person, and like, oh, wow, that really hurt my feelings.
Yeah, and I'm glad you called those people out on that. And there's a couple of quick things here. There's a great picture of Pierce Brosnan kissing you on the top of your head, which you joke about. Supposedly, there's an NC-17 Mrs. Doubtfire cut, which you also posted, which I think would be phenomenal to be released. But the one I really want to go into with you, and I told you this off air, you had a great tweet about July 4th and people shooting off fireworks. Boy, did you nail that. As it applies to veterans, I mean, because my mother's visiting, we have 4 dogs in the house right now. And they are shaking like they are shivering, like it's 0 degrees in the house. Veterans, I can tell you, having an 11-month-old, it's not very helpful. Just whatever you want to say on that, because it's a really good point that I hope people consider July 4th.
Yeah, so I was just bringing it up because it happened to be at the same time that my dog was shaking underneath the coffee table because of fireworks. And a friend of mine who is a veteran, I work a lot with the veteran community now, and I work with them on mindfulness techniques for the management of post-traumatic stress. We work on yoga practices together. We work on therapeutic writing practices together. And so I've been working with vets for about 5 years, and a veteran friend of mine texted me using lots of expletives that I don't know if I'm allowed to use on your show, but just about fireworks and how painful they are for him, and indeed for anyone dealing with any kind of post-traumatic stress. And so I just think that it's just important for people to be aware of the impacts of their choices, I think. And so I do like to, when I can, to use my platform, to use my social media for just kind of letting people know about things like that. I know before I started working with veterans about 5 years ago, I would never have thought about that. And I didn't know a lot about the veteran community, and I didn't know a lot about their rates of suicide and their rates of post-traumatic stress and the things that they're dealing with. And so with things like that tweet about fireworks, with the tweet that I had go viral before, which was, just kind of calling out one of those articles that was like, hey, where is she now? That girl from Mrs. Doubtfire. And it's like, well, it's been 25 years. So yeah, I've had a lot of things going on. I just want people to, kind of think about the impacts of their actions, and maybe try to take the perspectives of other people sometimes, because we can get so locked in our own bubbles, and we can kind of forget to do that.
No, well said. And for those listening who want to know a little about your early life, your life changes at 4 years old at a farmer's market. But when you get a chance to explain that, please do. But I want to ask you, do you ever wonder what life would have been like if your parents didn't call the number on that business card? Do you ever wonder how life would have played out? Or are you just a person that's not really looking in the rear view? You're all about what's straight ahead.
I have had that thought of, the guy came up to us at a farmer's market and offered his card and said, I'm casting for a commercial. I think your daughter would be great in it. And there had never been any thought before I was 4 years old about me being an actor. What would have happened if my parents just chucked that card in the next garbage can and we went on? it's hard to imagine. It really is hard to imagine. And it gets into all kinds of, interesting philosophical questions about fate and destiny. And is there such a thing? And, I do wonder if somehow I would have ended up in the film industry anyway, or if I just would have had, a great normal life going to school and being a regular kid. But the film industry, it was a reason that I had a lot of fantastic experiences and met a lot of wonderful people. It's because of the film industry I met my husband. It's because of the film industry that I now do the work that I do with veterans, and that I am a writer now. And, I have and do and know everything I am now because of that experience. So even though there were definitely challenges to it, I have zero regrets that was kind of the way that my life and my childhood went, because now I truly feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do, and I might have just had kind of an unusual path to get here.
No, that's a great answer, because it's all part of that one journey, that one path. It's a great answer. You've always loved writing? I want to say I read somewhere where even at 6 years old you're writing. Would you classify it as, Lisa, as therapeutic, or as something you just loved? Because I know you've always kind of loved writing. Is that a correct assumption?
Absolutely correct. Yeah. Since I could hold a crayon, I was using writing as a way of processing the world and what I thought about things. And I just wrote everything down. I have moved boxes and boxes and boxes of journals because I've just done that all my life. And so a piece of it is definitely therapeutic for me, which is why it's such an honor for me to kind of work with people who are processing trauma and really difficult things and help them to kind of put their thoughts down on paper, because it has been so helpful for me in order to process that way. But what I later learned about writing is that it's also this profound form of connection and community. And through writing, I really found that when I write about my own experiences, it's not because I just love talking about myself and, just want to kind of overshare all over the place. It really is an opportunity for me to be able to kind of model this way of being really honest and being really vulnerable and being authentic and not being ashamed of anxiety and depression and a panic disorder, all of which I struggle with. And by putting it out there, it's a way of letting other people know that they're not alone if they're struggling with these things. They're not alone if they wake up one day and realize that the thing they've been doing forever no longer suits them, and they want to do something that makes a switch and maybe isn't what other people have expected from them, the way that I did when I was an actor for 18 years and eventually realized that was not the path that I wanted for the rest of my life. So even though that was an incredibly unpopular decision, that was what I needed to do in order to live a life that felt like it was full of passion and meaning, and something that I really wanted to feel good about contributing to the world. So for me, writing started off therapeutic, but then I realized when I did share it that it was about connection and community and reaching out to others.
Yeah, and you mentioned your 18-year acting career, a very legitimate filmography, absolutely wonderful actor. Let me ask you, so there's two things I want to touch upon before you go into Mrs. Doubtfire, and then the amazing things you're currently doing. When it comes to, there's two things that, they're both, I think, one's a little scary, one's comical. The time you met Princess Diana and almost fell over trying to curtsy. And I haven't gotten to your book yet, because I was looking on Amazon. One of them is almost sold out, by the way, Lisa. And we're going to get into that in a second. But obviously there's audiobooks. But I have to say, then the second thing I didn't understand was you kind of almost got kidnapped. So there's two things there. I don't know how you want it to, you could say it's in the book, save it for that, or you could expand as much as you'd like.
Yeah, so those were two dramatic and polar opposite experiences for me. I was incredibly honored to be able to meet Princess Diana. I did a movie called Rambling Rose, and that was with Robert Duvall, Diane Ladd, and Laura Dern. And I was 11 when I did that, and we had a royal premiere in London. And I didn't actually know what that meant. I just thought, oh, we'll go to London and watch the movie. But I didn't realize that Princess Diana was going to be there, sitting in the audience, watching the movie with us. And so I did get to meet her. I had to be trained to curtsy. We all had to go through the training to meet royalty. And I tell you, a curtsy might look easy. It is not. And it is especially not when you're 11 and kind of clumsy anyway. And there's all this pressure because there are all these cameras and PS, like Princess Diana is staring at you. And so I did almost fall over. Luckily, she kindly steadied me so I didn't end up face planting in front of a princess. But that was a fantastic experience, and we got to chat a little bit, and she was as spectacular as you would hope she would have been. And so, yeah, that was a pretty big highlight for an 11-year-old.
Yeah, I'd say so. And, it's amazing because, I hear all these, every young actor or someone who starts acting young, they all have their own path. And there's something to be said about leaving on your own terms because sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes the ending is very much unpleasant. And it's so refreshing to see that you left on your terms and doing something that you would really like to do. What I wanted to ask you is, as an actor, you mentioned this, I think, in an interview, was the nightmare auditions. I mean, I've had a child actor on, I want to say, or started acting as a child a couple episodes ago, and he was talking how they were yelling at him, how he had no future. And I mean, it was just utterly cruel. I think you've gone through some of those, or you did go through some of those same things, right, Lisa?
Yeah, I definitely had some brutal experiences. I don't think I had auditions that were particularly brutal, but I definitely had some difficult shoots on set where there were directors who, had unusual methods of trying to get performances out of people, and particularly kid actors. So, yeah, it's not kind of a warm, fuzzy environment most of the time. There are definitely experiences that were wonderful and supportive, and ones where the adults were really considerate about the fact that I was a kid actor and I was working, and kind of did a really good job balancing the fact that I was a professional and needed to be treated with respect because I was showing up and doing my job just the same as everybody else, but also that I was a kid, and to be very aware of that. So there were definitely instances where that went well, Mrs. Doubtfire being a shoot where they did that very well, but other shoots did not. And it can be really tough being a kid actor in a very adult environment where there is a lot going on that I personally was not ready for.
And you mentioned Mrs. Doubtfire, released in '93, directed by Christopher Columbus. For those listening, Robin Williams, Sally Field, Pierce Brosnan, and your family, as far as siblings that I know you speak very highly of, Matthew Lawrence and Mara Wilson. Is it the best set you think you've ever been on, Lisa?
In terms of treating the kids with respect, in terms of feeling like a family, in terms of being really close with the other actors, yeah, absolutely.
When Robin Williams passed, I have to tell you, I think we were at a restaurant in Portland, Maine, and I had to excuse myself. And at least I remember sobbing. And one of the things I find fascinating, one of the many things about your life, is the rapport that the two of you had off camera. I mean, on screen, obviously we see that it works wonderfully, but it's the off-camera stuff that I find so heartwarming. You know, the discussions you guys had about depression and just about life in general. I almost feel like there's a book in that itself. Talk to me about those moments and how special those moments were for you, Lisa.
Yeah, so Robin was very honest with me. He knew that I had anxiety, that I had had some experience with depression, that I was a highly sensitive person, that I was an empath, that I cried easily. Those are all things you learn pretty quickly about me when you get to know me, and Robin did get to know me. And so, he would tell me about his own experiences with mental wellness. He would talk very frankly about his issues with addiction and really wanted to, I think, prepare me. I was 14 at the time, so a really good time to kind of intervene and be like, hey, these substances are not going to help you feel better. And he really was incredibly vulnerable and open with me in a way that I found very inspiring and very unusual, to be honest. Like the fact that an adult would be so open with a 14-year-old, and especially back then, I do think there's more information and conversation about mental health now. But, 93, we weren't talking about it that much.
Good point. Mm.
And so the fact that he really sat down with me and was very honest, it was refreshing, and it was incredibly helpful and beneficial for me. And I do think it is one of the reasons that I continue to do the work that I do, because it had such an impact on me that he would be open, and that he would kind of model this vulnerability for me, and that he let me know that I was not alone with this stuff, that I was not a freak, that I was not a weirdo, that, this was just something that I was going to need to deal with in my life, and that he also had to deal with that in his life, and he took a road that he didn't want me to take.
Well, that's a beautiful comment. Let me ask you, so is it hard to contain yourself during scenes with Robin? Not only you, but the rest of the cast. Was it because he's always, he's way ahead of his time as far as comedy, as far as his view on anxiety and depression. He's just he was such a visionary. Was it hard to contain yourself around him during shoots?
Oh, I totally ruined a take or two laughing. Yeah. So there is one moment where Pierce says, "Your accent is a little muddled," and Robin comes back with, "So is your tan." And that was not in the script, and it was totally off the cuff, and I was off camera watching, and I lost it. Like, I just thought it was hilarious. And I don't know what the audio wizards did because that was the only take. So somehow they removed me laughing out of that sound so that I didn't actually ruin the take and they could use it. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, and there's also a story about Christopher Columbus, who seems like a very sweet guy as well, introducing you to his mother, who is later obviously Mrs. Doubtfire. I think it was you, and it might have been Matthew he introduces his quote-unquote mother to. Did that happen, Lisa?
Yeah. I'm still not over that.
And are you guys all in? Like, do you believe at the time that this is Christopher Columbus's mother?
100%. Yeah. So Chris introduced us to his mom, and it was the three of us. I believe Mara was there as well, and we just chatted with his mom. And we'd never seen Robin in his Doubtfire makeup, and I know personally for me, I was really worried about doing this movie because I thought there's absolutely no way makeup and a bodysuit, whatever, that Robin, as this character, is going to be able to fool his entire family into believing that he is this woman. And so, I was deeply concerned actually about my career in doing this movie, because I thought, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be a laughingstock. It's just going to be a garbage movie, and I'm going to be really embarrassed to be involved with it. And that was the moment where it changed, because the three of us totally bought into the fact that this was Chris's mom, and we chatted with her, and then later we came back on set and we were like, oh my God, that was Robin. We had zero idea. Oh my God, this movie actually might be really good.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned Pierce Brosnan earlier. He had so much fun with him. I mean, the run by fruiting might be one of the best lines in all of movie. It's just such a wonderful family. You could just tell that you bonded really well. And Mrs. Doubtfire is certainly a precursor to what you do in the present. It helps so many kids. And I remember I had friends that this movie helped with their parents were separated or getting divorced. This movie just had such a huge heart in that way. Two last things about Mrs. Doubtfire. At 14 years old, do you find that you're coping with anxiety at that time? How bad was it? Because I know there was an issue with your high school where they quote unquote, broke up with you. I wish my high school broke up with me, by the way, Lisa. But then Robin does something really sweet. And your high school still says no, but they still frame the letter. Talk about phony. But anyways, it's a great story. Share whatever you'd like out of it. I think people would enjoy that.
Yeah, so Mrs. Doubtfire was a particularly long shoot because we had so many rehearsals, and it was the schedule was very spaced out because Robin needed to spend so much time in the makeup chair every day. So we had a particularly long shoot for that. And so I was at the time going to high school in Canada, which is where I'm from and where I lived at the time. And so partway through the shoot, I had been sending my schoolwork back. They'd been putting work together and mailing it to me. I'd been doing it with my tutor. Child actors are required to have 3 hours of schooling on set every day. And so I was doing my schoolwork and sending it back to my high school, but they decided that even though they had agreed to this arrangement, that it was too hard on the teachers to have to put together schoolwork for me. And so they just basically told me, don't come back. This is too hard. We don't want to do this anymore. Which, is fairly devastating when it's kind of the only normal thing in your world as a 14-year-old. And so I was pretty upset about that. Robin saw that I was upset, asked me what was going on. And when I explained it to him, he insisted on sending a letter to my principal. And so the letter was incredibly kind. I have it up on my website if anybody wants to see it. But it was an incredibly kind letter saying basically hey, this kid is trying to balance her career and her education. Can you please help her out? And they received the letter and framed it and put it up in the principal's office, but they didn't ask me to come back. So it didn't work. However, it did. Again, it taught me a lot about kind of, he stuck his neck out for me. He did something for me that he didn't have to do. And even though it didn't change the outcome, it absolutely meant the world to me to know that he had my back and that he acknowledged hey, this is not right. And that was something that had a really massive impact on me.
No, that's beautiful. And they wanted to make a part 2, and for a variety of reasons it didn't come to fruition, but it was Mrs. Doubtfire would follow you to college to keep an eye on you. I thought that would have been an interesting scenario. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Independence Day, another wonderful movie you've done. Is there any scenario, Lisa, where you would return to acting?
It's really hard for me to think of a scenario in which I would want to go back. I love my life now. I feel like I had a great career as an actor, and for the most part, I enjoyed it. You can never say never because who knows what's going on with the world. But it's hard for me to imagine kind of what would need to happen for me to go back, because I just have so many things that I really love doing right now.
And when you're done with acting, you head to UVA, you major in sociology. I want to say this is 2010, and then you meet the love of your life. And do I have that correct? Is that timeline close?
I actually met Jeremy in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So we met in 1998, actually.
I'm way off on that part of it. Okay.
Yeah. So we met when I was still an actor. I did a movie called Beautician and the Beast. Mm-hmm. That was Fran Drescher and Timothy Dalton.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and so there was an actor in that movie who played my boyfriend. He and I got to be friends, and so I was hanging out with him after the shoot and met his roommate, who is now my husband. So we have known each other for a very long time. So yeah, we actually moved to Virginia together.
And the UVA, you did graduate in 2010. Do I have that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And how much did that help you? Because for those listening, you have a full plate. You have 2 books, the first of which is called Not Just Me, Anxiety, Depression, and Learning to Embrace Your Weird. The second is called You Look Like That Girl, a Child Actor Stops Pretending and Finally Grows Up. You also do things with, as you mentioned, veterans, and you do, I think it's weekly letters and meditation and yoga. Is there enough? I regret asking you about ever returning to acting because I don't know when in the day you would fit that into your schedule.
It's a fair question.
Yeah. So, talk about, your approach. Every day must be great because you're helping people every single day. So say whatever you'd like, because it's a pretty amazing life and you're doing some pretty special things.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me, honestly. Yeah, so there were many reasons for leaving the film industry, but one of them was that my anxiety and depression was just absolutely debilitating and out of control. And I realized that I had to really handle that and figure out how to kind of take my life back, because it really was all controlled by this anxiety and depression. So I needed to really go on this, I'm going to use the word journey, which is totally cheesy, but it's true. I had to go on this journey of figuring out, how do I cope with these things that I have going on? And so I found these tools that are incredibly effective and helpful. This, mindfulness, therapeutic writing, yoga, breathing exercises, meditation, all of these things that have really helped me immensely. And it's not that I no longer have anxiety, but it is manageable. And I have these tools to go to when I feel overwhelmed. I just have this entire toolbox now that it's okay, here are the things that I know that I can do to help, keep this at a 2 rather than having it go all the way up to 9.5. And so, all of those things they saved my life, literally, not hyperbole, they saved my life. And so, what kind of evolved was that I felt so grateful that I had these things that could help me so much. And then I just felt really selfish not telling other people about them, because there were so many other people that I saw struggling with the same things. And, maybe they didn't want to go the medication route, which I am not anti-medication at all. I have literally seen it save lives, but it's not always what's good for everybody. And it, doesn't always need to be that first line of defense. So, for people who wanted to try something else, for people who felt like nobody else understood, that there were no other options for them, who maybe felt like they'd tried everything, but they had not tried these things, I felt like I really wanted to share those because it had done so much for me. And I realized that not enough people were aware that there were other things that you could do. And even if you didn't have, access to a therapist or money to pay for one, there are things that you can do in your own home without leaving, without, access to other things, without paying a lot of money that can help you to learn how to manage what are really, really difficult things.
Yeah, that's well said. Was there a teacher or a mentor, Lisa, that you had, or was this kind of, did you teach yourself a lot of these things? How do you hone your craft in things like meditation and yoga and, obviously the other things, but how did you kind of become familiar with all these things?
So I'm a dork, and I just read everything I can get my hands on. In terms of yoga, I did my yoga teacher training at Kripalu, which is up in Massachusetts, and I had some really incredible teachers up there. So that was a really important piece of it for me in terms of how to teach yoga, not as an exercise, right? Like not as, I want to get super bendy because I want to put my foot behind my head and, I want to get the cute yoga butt, right? It's not about that. It's like, how do we use yoga as a mental health tool? And that really, shifted things for me personally. So I was really excited to specifically teach that way and teach yoga for the processing of trauma. Like how do we use the body to really work through those traumatic events that our body and mind is really having a hard time letting go of. So I read a lot, and I study a lot, and I've had so many wonderful teachers and influences that I just kind of pull from everything I can get my hands on.
And do you consult with people individually? Like, so say if somebody is all in on everything you're doing, do you ever find, maybe consulting is not the right word, but do you talk with people individually? Do you find that takes place a lot about what they're going through, the battles they're fighting?
Yeah, I do one-on-one mindfulness counseling, consulting, whatever you want to call it. I love doing that because we're really able to kind of sit down and say, okay, like what do you need help with today? What is up for you today? What do you need help with? What do you need tools for? And we can really drill down on specific actionable things, right? This is not like airy-fairy hippie stuff. This is, based in dealing with the sympathetic nervous system. And so how do we really kind of give the person the most tools to be able to manage things? So I do weekend workshops. I do all kinds of classes, but I also do one-on-one coaching.
And Lisa's website, for those listening, is reallisajacob.com. Lisa, is there anything else you wanted to throw out there? You've given me all this time. You're such a kind soul. Before I let you go, is there anything you wanted to get out there?
Oh, my gosh, no, this was such a pleasure. You had great questions. Thank you so much.
Sorry. I couldn't control myself. I'm sorry, Louis.
Why can't you just pretend?
To be what, honey?
Pretend to be Mrs. Doubtfire and pretend to be Pudgy the bird and all those other things. Why can't you and Mom just pretend to be happy?
We probably could.
And we'd still be a family.
Yeah, we would be. But we'd be a pretend family, It wouldn't be real. You'd know. We'd be acting. You can't act 24 hours a day. I'm not that good an actor. Today proved that. No? Life's more real and wonderful than that. Acting? It's nice, but it's a job.
It's your job to be our father.
No, it's not a job. It's a joy being your father. I don't have to play the part of your father. I am your father. I may act like a fool, but I am your father, okay? Always. Rain, shine. That's the one wonderful thing in my life. You forgive me? Come on. It's okay. It's all right. I'm sorry. There'll be more days like this. I'm sorry. I can't spell discriminate either.